The ship was small. That was the first thing everyone noticed when it came through the massive golden gates of the Valoran Grand Exhibition Hall. While other species brought warships the size of mountains, covered in shining weapons and glowing shields, Earth sent something that looked like it was built in a garage. Taehyun stood at the front of the human delegation, his hands folded behind his back. He was a thin man with tired eyes and messy black hair. He had not slept in 3 days. The prototype behind him represented 10 years of his life. 10 years of failure, success, more failure, and finally something that worked. Beside him stood Yuna, the pilot chosen for this mission. She was shorter than Taehyun, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's space fleet. No medals, no fancy decorations, just a name tag and a small patch showing Earth on her shoulder. The exhibition hall was enormous. It floated in space near the Valoran homeworld, a station so large it had its own gravity and weather systems. Inside, hundreds of species had gathered to show their greatest achievements. The Valorans hosted this event every 50 years. It was their way of reminding the galaxy who held the most power. And the Valorans were powerful. Their empire stretched across 3,000 worlds. Their technology was so advanced that most species could not even understand how it worked. Their ships were beautiful and deadly, covered in crystal armor that could stop any weapon known to exist. The human delegation walked slowly toward the central platform where the Valoran High Council sat on floating thrones. There were 7 council members, each one tall and elegant with silver skin and 4 arms. They wore robes made of light itself, shifting colors with every movement. High Counselor Vexen watched the humans approach with an expression of bored amusement. He had lived for 800 years and had seen countless species come to beg for recognition. Most of them were forgotten within a century. Humans, Vexen said, his voice echoing through the hall. You are the new species from the outer edge. The ones who only discovered space travel 40 years ago. Yes, High Counselor, Taehyun replied. His voice was calm and steady. We are honored to be invited to this exhibition. Invited is a strong word, another counselor said with a laugh. We were curious. Your kind spread so quickly through your small corner of space. We wanted to see what made you think you belonged among true civilizations. A wave of laughter spread through the hall. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species found this very funny. The humans were like children who had wandered into a meeting of adults. Yuna felt her face grow hot with anger. But she kept her expression blank. Taehyun had warned her this would happen. He had told her to stay calm no matter what anyone said. We brought our prototype, Taehyun said, gesturing toward the small ship. We call it the Seedling. The laughter grew louder. The Seedling was maybe 30 meters long. It had no visible weapons. Its hull was dark, gray metal with no decorations. Compared to the massive warships around it, the Seedling looked like a toy. That is your great achievement? Vexen asked, leaning forward with genuine confusion. That little thing? Yes, High Counselor. A Valoran commander named Draxon stepped forward from the crowd. He was younger than the council members, with bright golden eyes that burned with pride. He commanded the Valoran Fifth Fleet, one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. I have seen cargo containers more impressive than that ship, Draxon said loudly so everyone could hear. Did your species run out of materials? Or is this some kind of joke? Oh, it is not a joke, Taehyun said quietly. Then what is it supposed to do? Draxon walked closer to the Seedling, studying it with open disgust. I see no weapons. No shield generators. The engine looks like something from ancient history. This thing would not survive 10 seconds against even our oldest training vessels. Yuna stepped forward. The Seedling is not meant to look impressive. It is meant to perform. Draxon turned to look at her with surprise. Most species did not dare speak back to a Valoran commander. Perform? Perform what? A comedy routine? More laughter filled the hall. Yuna did not smile. It performs its purpose, she said simply. Draxon shook his head and turned to the High Council. My lords, I recommend we end this display of embarrassment. The humans clearly do not understand what this exhibition is for. They should return to their little corner of space and continue playing with their toys while real civilizations do real work. Vexen nodded slowly. I am inclined to agree. Humans, you have traveled far, and we appreciate your enthusiasm. But you are not ready for the galactic stage. Perhaps in 1,000 years, you will have something worth showing. Taehyun did not argue. He simply bowed his head in acceptance. But then Vexen raised one of his 4 hands, and the hall grew silent. However, the High Counselor continued, there is another matter we must discuss. Your species has been expanding into territories that border Valoran space. This cannot continue. End quote. We have only settled empty worlds, Taehyun said carefully. Worlds that no other species claimed. All space belongs to those strong enough to take it, Draxon interrupted. And you humans are clearly not strong. Your prototype proves that. You have nothing that could stop even the smallest Valoran patrol ship. What are you suggesting? Yuna asked. Vexen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We are giving humanity a choice. You will become a client species of the Valoran Empire. You will pay tribute, follow our laws, and serve our needs. In exchange, we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy. And if we refuse, Taehyun asked, then we will demonstrate why the Valoran Empire has ruled for 10,000 years, Draxon said, his golden eyes gleaming. We will burn your worlds until nothing remains but ash and memory. The hall was completely silent now. Every alien species watched to see how the humans would react. Most expected them to immediately accept. What choice did they have? Earth was nothing compared to the Valoran Empire. Taehyun looked at Yuna. She looked back at him. Something passed between them. An understanding that needed no words. We need time to consider, Taehyun said finally. You have until tomorrow, Vexen declared. Use that time wisely. And take your little prototype with you. Looking at it offends me. The human delegation turned and walked back toward the seedling. Behind them, the laughter started again. Aliens pointed and made jokes. Some took pictures to show their friends back home. The humans and their sad little ship would be entertainment for years to come. As Yuna climbed into the seedling's cockpit, she finally allowed herself to smile. They have no idea, she whispered. Taehyun sat down beside her and began running system checks. No, they do not. And that is exactly what we wanted. The seedling's engines hummed to life, a soft and quiet sound that no one in the hall even noticed. As the small ship lifted off and flew out of the exhibition, not a single Valoran thought to scan it. If they had, they might have seen the truth. They might have seen what was really hiding inside that simple gray hull. But they did not look. They were too busy laughing. And that was the biggest mistake the Valoran Empire ever made. The human delegation was given quarters in the lowest section of the station. It was where they kept the maintenance workers and cleaning staff. The message was clear. Humans were not welcome among the important guests. Taehyun sat on a hard metal bed, reviewing data on his tablet. The room was small and cold. The walls were bare gray metal, with no windows. A single light flickered overhead. Yuna paced back and forth in the narrow space between the beds. Her boots made sharp sounds on the floor with each step. She was angry. She had been angry since they left the exhibition hall, and the anger was not going away. They want to make us slaves, she said. That is what a client species means. Slaves with a nicer name. I know, Taehyun replied without looking up, and they gave us until tomorrow. Tomorrow, like we can just decide the fate of all humanity overnight. I know. Yuna stopped pacing and looked at him. You seem very calm about this. Taehyun finally put down his tablet and met her eyes. I am not calm. I am focused. There is a difference. A knock came at the door. Yuna tensed, her hand moving toward the small weapon hidden under her jacket. Taehyun shook his head slightly, and she relaxed. Come in, he called. The door slid open, and Commander Draxon walked in. He had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway. Behind him stood 4 Valoran soldiers in black armor, their weapons visible on their belts. Leaving your guards outside? Yuna asked. How brave of you. Draxon smiled at her. It was not a friendly smile. I do not need protection from humans. Your entire species could attack me at once, and I would still be drinking tea by sunset. What do you want, Commander? Taehyun asked. Draxon walked slowly around the small room, examining everything with obvious disgust. He picked up a human book from the table, looked at it with confusion, and dropped it on the floor. I wanted to see you myself, Draxon said. I wanted to understand what kind of species is so foolish that they come to the greatest exhibition in the galaxy with nothing but a flying garbage can. The seedling is not garbage, Yuna said. It is less than garbage. Garbage at least had value once. Draxon laughed at his own joke. I have commanded fleets that destroyed civilizations older than your entire species. I have burned worlds that dared to challenge Valoran rule. And you think that pathetic ship is supposed to impress us? Taehyun stood up slowly. He was shorter than Draxon by nearly a full meter, but he did not seem small. There was something in his eyes that made the Valoran commander pause. Commander Draxon, Taehyun said quietly. I understand that you need to believe you are superior. Your entire culture is built on that belief. Without it, you have nothing. Draxon's smile disappeared. Be careful, human. But I want you to understand something. Taehyun took a step closer. We did not come here to impress you. We came here to learn. Learn what? How to fail. We came to learn how you think, how you react, what makes you angry, what makes you overconfident. Taehyun paused. We have learned a lot today. For a moment, something flickered in Draxon's golden eyes. It might have been doubt, but it passed quickly, replaced by cold anger. You are trying to play games with me, Draxon said. It will not work. Tomorrow, you will either bow to the Empire, or you will die. Those are your only choices. There is always another choice, Yuna said. Draxon turned to her sharply. What did you say? I said there is always another choice. That is something humans believe very strongly. The Valoran commander stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. You are entertaining. I will give you that. He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. By the way, I have arranged a small demonstration for tomorrow morning. Before you give your answer to the council. What kind of demonstration? Taehyun asked. I am going to show your delegation what Valoran power really looks like. I want you to understand exactly what will happen to your worlds if you refuse our generous offer. Draxon's smile returned, cruel and sharp. I want you to see it with your own eyes, so there can be no confusion. He left without another word. The soldiers followed him, and the door slid shut. Yuna let out a long breath. I wanted to hit him. I know. I wanted to hit him very, very hard. I know. Taehyun picked up the book Draxon had dropped and placed it carefully back on the table. But you did not. That was good. What kind of demonstration is he planning? Taehyun sat back down on the bed. He is going to destroy something. Probably one of the captured ships from a conquered species. He wants to scare us. Will it work? It would work on most species. Taehyun smiled slightly. But humans are not most species. Aki. The next morning, the entire exhibition hall gathered for Draxon's demonstration. The human delegation was given seats at the very front, close enough to see everything clearly. Outside the station's massive windows, the Valoran Fifth Fleet had assembled. 40 warships, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. They hung in space like silver mountains, their hulls covered in the famous crystal armor that made them nearly indestructible. In the center of the formation floated a small moon. It was dead and gray, about 200 kilometers across. Sensors showed it was solid rock, with no life or resources. Draxon stood on a platform in front of the windows, addressing the crowd. Many species have challenged the Valoran Empire, he announced. All of them have failed. Today, I will show you why. He raised his hand, and the fleet began to move. The 40 warships formed a perfect circle around the moon. Weapons systems powered up, glowing with terrible energy. This moon represents resistance, Draxon continued. It represents anyone foolish enough to stand against us. He looked directly at Taehyun and Yuna. Watch carefully, humans. Watch and understand. He dropped his hand. The fleet fired. 40 beams of pure destruction hit the moon from every direction. The rock glowed white, then yellow, then began to break apart. In less than 30 seconds, the entire moon was reduced to dust and debris. The crowd cheered. Aliens stomped their feet and waved their limbs in approval. The power of the Valoran Empire was undeniable. Draxon smiled with satisfaction. That moon was larger than most of your human cities, and we destroyed it in moments. Imagine what we could do to your soft little planet. Taehyun and Yuna did not react. They sat perfectly still, their faces showing nothing. This seemed to annoy Draxon. He had expected fear. He had expected begging. Instead, he got silence. Do you have nothing to say? He demanded. Taehyun stood up slowly. The crowd grew quiet, curious to see what the primitive human would do. Commander Draxon, Taehyun said, his voice clear and steady. You have shown us your power. Now I would like to ask for one small thing. You are in no position to ask for anything. It is a simple request. A trial of combat. Whispers spread through the crowd. Draxon's eyes widened with surprise. You want to fight us? I want to give our prototype a chance to prove itself. One ship against whatever you choose to send. If we lose, we will accept your terms without any further argument. We will become your client species. And if you win? Taehyun smiled. We will not ask for much. Just the right to be left alone. Just our freedom. Draxon laughed. And this time it was genuine. You cannot be serious. Your little garbage ship against Valoran fighters? Yes, done. Draxon did not even hesitate. I will send 12 fighters, my best pilots. They will destroy your prototype in minutes, and then you will kneel before the council. We accept, Yuna said, standing beside Taehyun. Draxon shook his head in disbelief. Prepare your ship, humans. Prepare to die. As they walked back toward the seedling, Yuna leaned close to Taehyun. 12 fighters? Yes. They could destroy a small fleet. Yes. Yuna smiled. Perfect. The seedling waited for them in the hangar bay, small and gray and unimpressive. But as Yuna climbed into the pilot's seat, she could feel the ship hum with hidden power. Wake up, she whispered, touching the controls. It is time to show them what you can really do. Somewhere deep inside the ship, something ancient and powerful began to stir. The combat arena was a section of empty space 5,000 kilometers from the station. Every species at the exhibition had moved to observation decks to watch the fight. No one wanted to miss this moment. It would be talked about for centuries. Most expected it to be over quickly. A few even felt sorry for the humans. It was like watching a small animal walk into the territory of a predator. The outcome was already decided. Only the suffering remained. Yuna guided the seedling into position at the center of the arena. Through her cockpit window, she could see the 12 Valoran fighters approaching from the opposite direction. They flew in perfect formation, their crystal armor shining like diamonds under the distant stars. Each fighter was 3 times the size of the seedling. They moved with smooth grace, their engines leaving trails of blue light behind them. The pilots inside were the best the Valoran Empire had to offer. They had trained for hundreds of years. They had fought in dozens of wars. They had never lost. Communications coming through, Taehyun said from his station behind Yuna. He was monitoring all the ship's systems, making final adjustments to equipment that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. Yuna opened the channel. Draxon's voice filled the cockpit, broadcast so everyone watching could hear. Humans, this is your last chance. Surrender now, and we will make your defeat painless. Continue with this foolishness, and I will order my pilots to make you suffer. Yuna did not respond. Her hands moved across the controls, bringing the seedling systems online one by one. Your silence tells me everything, Draxon continued. Very well. Pilots, engage the target. Destroy it slowly. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who challenge the Valoran Empire. The 12 fighters broke formation and spread out, surrounding the seedling from every direction. There was no escape. The human ship was trapped in a sphere of deadly enemies. On the observation decks, the crowd watched with excitement. Some were already celebrating. The Velarans in the audience were opening bottles of expensive drinks, ready to toast their inevitable victory. High Counselor Vexen sat on his floating throne, watching with mild interest. He had seen this happen many times before. Foolish species always thought they were special. They always thought they could win. And they always died. "What is the human ship doing?" someone in the crowd asked. The seedling was not moving. It sat completely still in the center of the arena, its engines dark. The cockpit lights had dimmed. For a moment, it almost looked dead. The Valoran pilots hesitated. This was unexpected. Most ships tried to run when surrounded. Most ships tried to fight. This one did nothing. "Maybe they are giving up," one pilot said over the communication channel. "Or maybe it is a trick," another replied. "There is no trick that can save them now," a third pilot said with confidence. "All fighters, fire on my command." The 12 fighters locked their weapons on the seedling. Targeting computers calculated the perfect angle of attack. In 3 seconds, they would fire. In 5 seconds, the human ship would be dust. Fire. 12 beams of energy shot toward the seedling, and then something impossible happened. The seedling moved. Not like a ship, not like anything the Velarans had ever seen. One moment, it was in the center of the crossfire. The next moment, it was somewhere else entirely, 50 meters to the left, and all 12 beams passed through empty space. "What?" Draxon's voice cracked with shock. "What just happened?" "Sensors, report. We cannot explain it, Commander." The human ship simply moved. There was no engine signature. No acceleration. It just appeared in a different location, in the cockpit. Yuna smiled. Her hands danced across the controls with practiced ease. Phase shift successful. They cannot hit what they cannot predict. "Beginning the demonstration," Taehyun said calmly. "Let them see stage 1. The seedling's hull began to change. The dull gray metal rippled like water, and suddenly weapons appeared where there had been nothing before. Not normal weapons. These looked organic, almost alive, made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. "What is that?" one of the Valoran pilots shouted. "Where did those weapons come from?" The seedling fired. A single shot. Just one. But it hit the nearest fighter with perfect accuracy. The crystal armor that had protected Valoran ships for 10,000 years cracked like thin ice. The fighter exploded in a ball of silent fire. The crowd on the observation decks went completely quiet. Draxon's face turned pale. "All fighters, attack pattern Delta. Destroy that ship now." The remaining 11 fighters attacked with everything they had. Energy beams crisscrossed the arena. Missiles launched in swarms. The amount of firepower directed at the seedling was enough to destroy a small planet. None of it hit. The seedling moved through the attacks like it was dancing. It appeared and disappeared, shifting position in ways that broke every law of physics the Velarans understood. One moment it was above the fighters. The next it was below. Then behind. Then in the center of their formation. And every time it reappeared, it fired. A second fighter exploded, then a third, then a fourth. "This is impossible," Draxon screamed. "How is this possible?" Taehyun spoke softly to Yuna. "Increase speed to 70%. Show them stage 2. "With pleasure," she replied. The seedling stopped disappearing and started simply moving faster than anything the Valorans could track. It became a blur. A streak of gray that wove between the fighters like thread through fabric. Each time it passed a Valoran ship, another explosion followed. 5, 6, 7, 8. The remaining 4 pilots panicked. They broke formation and tried to flee back to the main fleet. Their engines burned at maximum power. They called for help. They begged for reinforcements. The seedling caught them all. 9, 10, 11. The last pilot ejected from his ship just before it exploded. He floated in space, watching through his helmet as the tiny human ship that should have been impossible circled the debris of his squadron. 12 fighters, the best pilots in the Valoran Empire, destroyed in less than 4 minutes. On the observation decks, no one made a sound. Drinks fell from nerveless hands. Some species looked at each other with new eyes, suddenly realizing that everything they knew about power in the galaxy might be wrong. High Counselor Vexen rose from his throne. His silver face showed an emotion that Valorans rarely felt. Fear. Draxon's voice came over the communication channel, but it was different now. The arrogance was gone. Only raw anger remained. "Send more ships," he ordered. "Send the entire reserve wing. 50 fighters. I want that human ship destroyed." "Commander, perhaps we should." "I said send them. That is an order." 50 new fighters launched from the Valoran fleet. They approached the combat arena in a massive wave, their weapons already firing before they were even in range. The space around the seedling lit up with explosions as energy beams hit debris from the first battle. Inside the cockpit, Yuna felt the ship respond to her thoughts. It was like nothing she had ever experienced. The seedling was not just a ship. It was something else. Something that was learning, adapting, becoming more with every passing moment. "Stage 3, Taehyun said. "Let them see everything." The seedling's hull shifted again. This time, instead of weapons, something else appeared. Strange symbols began glowing along the ship's surface, ancient patterns that no one in the galaxy recognized. "What is it doing now?" Vexen demanded. "Someone tell me what that ship is doing." Agen. The 50 fighters were almost in range. In seconds, they would overwhelm the seedling with sheer numbers. No ship, no matter how advanced, could fight that many enemies at once, or so they thought. The symbols on the seedling flashed bright white, and suddenly, the ship was not alone. Copies appeared. Perfect copies of the seedling. Each one identical to the original. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 16. 16 became 50. Now there were 50 seedlings facing 50 Valoran fighters. A perfectly matched battle, except it was not matched at all, because every single copy had the same impossible abilities as the original. "Fire," Yuna whispered. The arena turned into chaos. 50 seedlings moved through the Valoran formation, destroying fighters faster than anyone could count. The Valoran pilots did not know which targets were real. They did not know where to aim. They did not know how to fight something that had never existed before. In 2 minutes, all 50 fighters were gone. The copies of the seedling faded away, leaving only the original floating alone in a field of burning debris. Silence filled every communication channel. Silence filled every observation deck. Silence filled the heart of the Valoran Empire. Taehyun opened a broadcast channel so everyone could hear. "That was a demonstration," he said calmly. "The seedling was fighting at less than full capacity. We held back because we did not want to cause unnecessary death." He paused and let the words sink in. "Now do you understand why we were not afraid?" Panic spread through the Valoran fleet like fire through dry grass. Commanders shouted orders that made no sense. Pilots scrambled to their ships without waiting for instructions. Communication channels filled with screaming voices, each one demanding to know what was happening, what they should do, how they should respond to something that was completely impossible. Draxon stood on the command bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display. The debris of 62 fighters drifted through space, 62 of his best pilots, dead or floating helplessly in emergency pods, destroyed by a ship that was supposed to be primitive garbage. His hands were shaking. He could not make them stop. "Commander." One of his officers approached carefully. "The High Council is demanding a report. They want to know your strategy." "My strategy?" Draxon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My strategy was to crush an insect. And the insect turned out to be something else entirely." "What are your orders?" Draxon forced himself to think. He had not become a commander of the Fifth Fleet by giving up. He had won battles against enemies that seemed unbeatable. He had conquered worlds that others thought impossible to take. There had to be a way. The human ship is powerful, he said slowly. But it is still just one ship. We have 400 vessels in this fleet. Even if it destroys 10 ships for every attack we make, we will eventually overwhelm it. You want to sacrifice our ships? I want to win. Draxon straightened his shoulders and lifted his chin. All ships, move to attack formation. We are going to destroy that human prototype even if we have to throw our entire fleet at it. The Valoran fleet began to move. 400 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, arranged themselves into a massive wall of firepower. Their weapons powered up, filling the space around them with deadly energy. On the observation decks, the gathered species watched with growing unease. Many of them had been conquered by the Valorans. They had seen this fleet crush their own civilizations. Part of them wanted the humans to succeed, but another part knew how dangerous it was to hope. Inside the seedling, Yuna monitored the approaching fleet. Her face was calm, but her heart was beating fast. This was it. The real test. Taehyun, she said quietly. They are sending everything. I see. The copies we made earlier were good for confusing a small force. But 400 ships? We cannot create enough copies to match that. 1. We do not need to. Taehyun finished typing something on his console and sat back. The copies were Stage 3. It is time for Stage 4. Stage 4? Yuna turned to look at him. You never told me about Stage 4. Because I was not sure it would work until now. Taehyun smiled tiredly. The seedling has been learning. Yuna. Every battle, every movement, every attack. It has been absorbing data and evolving its systems. That was always the plan. The seedling is not just a weapon. It is an intelligence. Artificial intelligence? Something beyond artificial. Something new. He reached out and touched the wall of the ship gently, almost affectionately. When we built the seedling, we did not just build a machine. We built something that could grow, something that could become whatever it needed to be to survive. The Valoran fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams shot toward the seedling from every direction. The amount of power was beyond anything Yuna had ever witnessed. It was enough to crack planets. It was enough to burn stars. Brace yourself, Taehyun said. The beams hit the seedling and passed through. On the command bridge of Draxon's flagship, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Direct hits confirmed, one officer reported. But the target is still there. That is impossible, Draxon growled. Fire again. They fired again, and again, and again. Every shot passed through the seedling like it was made of smoke. The ship hung motionless in space, taking hit after hit without any damage at all. It is not there, another officer realized. The ship we are seeing is not really there. It is some kind of projection. Then where is the real one? Alarms suddenly screamed throughout the flagship. Red lights flashed everywhere. Officers ran to their stations with expressions of terror on their faces. Commander, we have an intruder. Something has entered our ship. What? How? Unknown. It appeared inside our primary shield generator room. Security is responding now. Draxon pulled up the internal camera feed. He saw something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. A small gray object floated in the shield generator room. It looked like a piece of the seedling, maybe a meter across, but it was moving on its own, and wherever it touched the equipment, the metal began to change. Systems shut down. Consoles went dark. The shield generators powered off with a dying whine. It is inside the ship, Draxon whispered. The seedling broke itself into pieces, and those pieces are inside our ship. Similar reports started coming in from other vessels in the fleet. Small fragments of the seedling had appeared inside dozens of warships simultaneously. They were not attacking the crew. They were not causing explosions. They were doing something worse. They were turning off everything. Weapons went offline. Engines failed. Navigation systems crashed. Life support flickered but stayed on. As if the fragments knew the difference between military systems and the things that kept people alive. Within minutes, half the Valoran fleet was drifting dead in space. Get them out, Draxon screamed. Find those fragments and destroy them. Security teams tried. They shot at the fragments with every weapon they had. Nothing worked. The fragments absorbed the attacks, or simply moved out of the way faster than anyone could react. On High Counselor Vexen's observation deck, absolute silence had fallen. The most powerful fleet in the known galaxy was being taken apart by something the size of a small shuttle. How? Vexen murmured. How did they develop this technology? They discovered space travel only 40 years ago. This should be impossible. One of his advisors leaned close. High Counselor, perhaps we should consider negotiating. Negotiating? With humans? They are destroying our fleet without killing anyone. They are showing mercy. That means they want something other than our destruction. Vexen stared at the advisor for a long moment. The word mercy felt strange in his mind. The Valoran Empire had not shown mercy in 10,000 years. They had forgotten what it looked like. In the seedling's cockpit, Yuna watched as the ship reassembled itself. The fragments that had infiltrated the Valoran fleet returned one by one, sliding back into place like puzzle pieces. The hull became whole again. Stage 4 is complete, Taehyun announced. 80% of the fleet is disabled. The rest are too scared to fight. Yuna looked at the tactical display. Ships were powering down their weapons voluntarily. Some were even turning around and heading away from the combat zone. The Valoran Fifth Fleet, the terror of the galaxy, had been defeated without a single death. What now? She asked. Taehyun opened a communication channel to the entire exhibition. His voice was carried to every ship, every station, every observation deck. Valorans, he said. You gave us a choice. Become your slaves or die. We chose neither. He paused to let the words settle. We did not come here to conquer you. We did not come here to prove we are better than you. We came here to deliver a message. The seedling is a prototype, a first attempt, a proof of concept. It is not even the most powerful thing humanity has built. It is simply the thing we chose to show you because we knew you would underestimate it. On his flagship, Draxon sank into his command chair. His golden eyes had lost their fire. He looked like a man who had just watched everything he believed in turn to dust. Your empire has ruled through fear for 10,000 years, Taehyun continued. You conquered species by threatening to destroy them. You kept order through violence and intimidation. But fear only works when you are the strongest. And today, we proved that you are not. Vexen listened with his hands folded. His silver face showed no expression, but inside, something was breaking. The foundation of his entire civilization was crumbling with every word the human spoke. We offer you something different, Taehyun said. We offer you peace. Real peace. But the cooperation of equals. And if we refuse? Draxon's voice came over the channel, weak and bitter. Taehyun smiled sadly. Then we will leave you alone in a galaxy that now knows the truth. We will not force you to change. But we suspect many of your subject species will feel differently now that they know you can be beaten. The communication ended. In the silence that followed, the galaxy began to change. 3 days passed after the battle. 3 days of chaos, confusion, and change. The news spread faster than anyone expected. By the second day, every inhabited world in the galaxy knew what had happened at the Valoran exhibition. The mighty empire that had ruled for 10,000 years had been humiliated by a species they called primitive, by a ship they called garbage. On the Valoran homeworld, riots broke out in the streets. Citizens demanded answers. How could their fleet, their invincible fleet, be defeated so easily? How could their leaders be so wrong about the humans? On conquered worlds, something even more dangerous happened. Hope. Species that had lived under Valoran rule for centuries suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. They watched the recordings of the battle over and over again. They saw the seedling move through the Valoran fighters like they were standing still. They saw the fragments infiltrate the warships and disable them without killing anyone. They saw that the Empire could be beaten. And once that idea took root, it could not be removed. The first rebellion started on a world called Tessera, a planet of gentle beings who had been forced to mine precious metals for Valoran factories. They simply stopped working. When Valoran troops came to force them back to the mines, they refused to fight. They just sat down, and would not move. The second rebellion started on Korash, a world of warriors who had been serving as soldiers in the Velaran military. They threw down their weapons and walked away. When their commanders threatened to execute them, they laughed. What were executions compared to a lifetime of slavery? By the third day, 17 worlds had declared independence. By the end of the week, that number reached 42. The Velaran Empire, which had stood unshaken for 10,000 years, was falling apart. High Counselor Vexen sat alone in his chambers, watching reports come in from across the Empire. Each one was worse than the last. Supply lines breaking, communication networks failing, military units refusing orders. A soft knock came at his door. "Enter," he said tiredly. Tae-hyun walked in. He was still wearing the same simple uniform he had worn at the exhibition. No medals, no fancy decorations, just a thin human, with messy hair and tired eyes. "You wanted to speak with me, High Counselor." Vexen did not stand. He did not even look at his visitor. "I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" "Everything." Vexen finally turned to face the human. "How did you do it? How did a species that discovered space travel 40 years ago build something like the Seedling?" Tae-hyun sat down without being invited. It was a breach of protocol that would have meant death a week ago. Now, it barely mattered. "We did not build the Seedling," Tae-hyun said. "Not entirely." "What do you mean?" 3 years after we developed faster-than-light travel, we found something. An ancient structure floating in the void between galaxies. It was millions of years old. Maybe billions. We still do not know who built it. Vexen leaned forward with sudden interest. "What kind of structure? A library? Or maybe a school?" It contained knowledge. Information about technologies so advanced that our best scientists could not understand most of it. Tae-hyun smiled slightly. "But we understood some. Enough to build the Seedling. So your technology is stolen." "No, the structure wanted us to find it. There were clues leading to its location, hidden in the cosmic background radiation. Only a young species, one that was just learning to explore space, would notice those clues. Older civilizations had stopped looking for such things long ago." Vexen thought about this. The Valorans had stopped exploring centuries ago. They had believed there was nothing left to discover. They had been wrong. "Why did you not use this knowledge to conquer?" Vexen asked. "You could have built a fleet of seedlings. You could have crushed us completely." "Yes, we could have. Then why didn't you?" Tae-hyun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "Because conquest is easy. Anyone can destroy. The Valorans proved that for 10,000 years. We wanted to try something harder. What could be harder than building an empire? Keeping it." Tae-hyun met Vexen's eyes directly. "Your empire is falling apart right now. Not because of anything we did. Because of what you did. You ruled through fear, and fear only lasts until someone is more afraid of staying than leaving." Vexen had no response to this. It was true. And they both knew it. "Humanity chose a different path," Tae-hyun continued. "We decided that we would only use our power to defend, never to attack. We would protect the weak instead of crushing them. We would build relationships instead of demanding submission." "That sounds naive." "Maybe. But look at your empire now. Look at mine." Tae-hyun gestured toward the window, where stars glittered in the endless dark. "In 40 years, we have made friends across 100 worlds. Species that trade with us, learn from us, teach us. We grow stronger together. Meanwhile, your 3,000 worlds are tearing themselves apart because they finally have a chance to be free." A long silence filled the room. Finally, Vexen spoke. "What happens now? To me? To my people? That depends on you." Tae-hyun stood up. "We are not going to punish you. We are not going to take revenge for the threats you made, or the cruelty your empire has shown. That would make us no better than you. Then what do you want?" "We want you to change." Tae-hyun walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. The seedling was never meant to be a weapon of war. Its true purpose was to be a seed, a beginning. We wanted to plant an idea in the galaxy. What idea? That there is another way. That power does not have to mean oppression. That strength does not have to mean cruelty. That the strongest thing a civilization can do is choose to be kind when it could choose to be terrible. He opened the door. Think about it, High Counselor. And when you are ready to try something different, we will be here. He left. Vexen sat alone for a long time, thinking. 1 year later, the Valoran Empire officially dissolved. In its place, a new organization formed. They called it the Galactic Cooperation. It included the Valorans, most of their former subject species, and humanity. Tae-Hyun was there when the founding documents were signed. So was Yuna, still wearing her simple gray uniform. They stood at the back of the room, watching as representatives from hundreds of species agreed to work together instead of fighting. Do you think it will last? Yuna asked quietly. I do not know, Tae-Hyun admitted. Nothing lasts forever. But this is a better beginning than the galaxy has had in a very long time. And the seedling? Tae-Hyun smiled. The seedling has grown. It has spread its knowledge to every world that wants it. Hospitals, farms, clean energy, faster travel. The same technology that could destroy fleets is now saving lives. That was always the plan, was it not? Yes, from the very beginning. Tae-Hyun looked at the gathered representatives. Aliens of every shape and color, all working together for the first time in history. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted to give it a chance to be better. Outside the station, the seedling still floated in space. It was no longer alone. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species had gathered nearby, all of them carrying the same message. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy as a joke, a primitive species with a garbage ship and foolish dreams. Now they were something else entirely. They were the ones who changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, children played in parks and learned in schools. They did not know about the politics of distant stars. They did not know about the empire that had threatened their world. They only knew that the sky was full of wonders, waiting to be explored. In one of those parks, an old man sat on a bench, watching the children play. He had worked on the original seedling project decades ago. He had helped write the code that made the ship think and learn. A child ran up to him, breathless with excitement. Grandfather, tell me the story again. Tell me about the prototype that saved everyone. The old man smiled and pulled the child onto his lap. Once upon a time, he began, there was a little ship that everyone laughed at. They called it garbage. They said it would never amount to anything. But it did, the child said eagerly. Yes, it did. Because sometimes the smallest things can change the whole universe. Sometimes all it takes is one seed planted in the right soil. Above them, the stars shone brightly. And somewhere out there, the seedling was still growing.